Okay friends, today we're gonna get a bit controversial. I've been binging Elden Ring ever since Shadow of the Erdtree came out. The perks of being a NEET, I guess. Don't worry, this isn't gonna be a review of the DLC. There's already plenty of those that go into great detail about its pros and cons, and I don't feel any need to add my 2 cents. I've been replaying the game from start to finish, including the DLC on a new character, and dabbled in a bit of PvP too. Now, after adding another 100 or so hours to my playtime, I've come to 2 striking conclusions. First, hunters are very special little people, and I hope they never change. And second, the combat system of Elden Ring is kinda confused. Now, I know what you think. No. Calm down. Please, sit down and listen. This isn't about the difficulty of the game, let alone the DLC. If anything, I found Elden Ring mostly easier than previous FromSoft titles. But the reason for this, I think, reveals a deep-running issue the game has. Elden Ring is an action game, but it is also an RPG. Now this isn't new, of course. There's plenty of action RPGs that offer the typical RPG pleasures such as stat growth, character customization, and build crafting, all the while offering a thrilling combat experience. But when Elden Ring tries to do the same thing, it just doesn't really mesh well, in my opinion. Now don't get me wrong, I'm well aware you can beat the game on level 1 with nothing but an unupgraded club without ever taking a hit. But over the course of the game, it became clear to me that the old Dark Souls formula of slow, patient, and disciplined 1v1 no longer seems like the intended way to play. So what is the intended way to play? I don't know, and that's the problem. With its roll catching, input reading, and at times downright funny tracking. The game seems geared towards tricking Dark Souls veterans a lot of the time, and you're supposed to fall back on different tools. But what are these tools?
Beans.
Well, we got absurdly broken Ashes of War, spirit summons, and cheesy builds that can face tank bosses without ever breaking a sweat, all of which could potentially trivialize the game. I hope the picture is becoming clearer by now. The former represents the action aspect of the game and comes off as a lot more awkward and mismatched than previous FromSoft titles. I know FromSoft had to do something to freshen up the old Dark Souls formula, but it just kind of feels like squeezing a square peg through a round hole. I know opinions on this will differ, but this is my impression. The height of rudeness, however, is that most bosses still aren't very difficult, so I don't even get the elation of having beaten a challenging boss, and it just kind of feels like completing a chore. There are exceptions, of course, but you know how exceptions and rules work together. The latter represents the RPG aspect of Elden Ring and feels like playing the game on easy mode. I want to call your attention to a neat little channel called cRPG Bro. cRPG Bro primarily makes character build videos for, you guessed it, cRPGs. Unlike action games, cRPGs are won or lost on the character sheet. There's very little skill involved in the actual gameplay most of the time, and you're instead supposed to boost your numbers through clever theory crafting. If done right, the game will be trivially easy, and believe it or not, this is what makes cRPGs fun. Now recently cRPG Bro has been posting Elden Ring videos, so let's take a look. Okay, we got the Turtle Poke build, a tanky Faith Caster, a Lifesteal build. Do you get the picture? These are cRPG builds. They win you the game, Elden Ring, ostensibly an action RPG, on the character sheet. Now I'm not saying you're not allowed to play the game this way, nor am I criticizing cRPG Bro. But they do perfectly highlight the big issue I have with the game. There's very little middle ground between the game's action aspect and the game's RPG aspect. I can either choose to face bosses in the action way and engage in an awkward dance of mind games memorization and at times downright nonsense, or I can choose to face them in the RPG way and completely trivialize the fight. The icing on the cake is that the game seems made for neither. Spirit summons completely break the boss AI and throw off your own timing as well. Ashes of War are subject to input reading and have to be timed very specifically if you want to avoid trading hits. And I can't tell you how many turtle builds I've seen who simply don't understand that some attacks are simply unblockable. To make a long story short, I'm simply not sure how I'm supposed to play the game. What was FromSoft's intention when they designed the combat system? Dark Souls, Bloodborne and Sekiro gave a clear answer to that question, but Elden Ring kinda left me confused. The combat at times feels so disjointed, I get the impression not even FromSoft knows. But to end the video on a positive note, I still think Elden Ring is a very fun game. Definitely one of the best ones of the last 10 years or so, but that's not a very high bar. The sheer amount of weapons in Ashes of War provides for a lot of fun experimentation, and I love the build variety. PvP is kind of a mess, but mostly fun if you ask me. The cheap nonsense at the player's hands makes PvP a lot funnier than it would otherwise be. I will always fondly remember the brief, terrifying and incredibly funny time Rolling Sparks was a nuke on demand. But PvP and its various issues are entirely different can of worms and kinda beside the point of this video. That is all I have to say. This was a very spontaneous video since I simply wanted to share a few thoughts and I will soon get back to the regular programming. Have a nice day. Also stop bloody finger and recusant infighting, no more brother